Hey, it's me, Vicki Marie. So it's Sunday, so it's Serial Killer Sunday. I can't be with you live tonight because, as you know, I'm in the UK. I've got go and see more family today, and I'll be out all day. So I thought I would record a video for you, so you've got video to watch later on today. About BTK serial killer Dennis Rader. Do you know anything about him? Dennis Rader is one of these serial killers that walk amongst us masquerading as a normal person. Mr. Normal, Mr. Church, Scoutmaster, Mr. Rules, abided by every rule except thou shalt not kill. And he's a bragger, someone who couldn't help but tease the police. And this is what led to his downfall, thank God, because he wasn't quite as clever as he thought he was. And it's a very intriguing case, BTK, because he would do anything to get to the person that he'd chosen. He would choose someone, obsess about them, and he actually killed a whole family just to have the pleasure, if you like, which is a horrible thing to say, but it's true for him, just to have the pleasure of killing the little girl from that family. Now, I'm not going into details, as you know, I don't go into details about what happened, how these murders were committed, any of them. But that was a particularly horrible, there's no murder that isn't horrible, I know that, but some are worse than others. Anyway, so he had 8 victims, was it 8 or 10 that didn't survive? We'll go through that anyway, that didn't survive. There were lots of other victims. Some did survive, or at least one survived. Yeah, because his killing career, if you like, was over quite a long time, because he went quiet for quite a long time and he came back. And the only reason police really knew, he teased the police. He gave himself the nickname BTK, bind, torture, kill. He gave himself that nickname. The police didn't give him that nickname. To me, is one of those killers that literally do walk amongst us. It could be your neighbour. He could be your child scout leader. He could be your preacher, or your. It could be anyone you know who's living with family, children, the most respectable life ever. You would not suspect them in a million years. If you had to choose who the BTK killer might be, nobody would ever have suspected this person. And in this video, we're going to hear a little bit from his daughter. Now, it's funny how, because I always feel for families of killers, because, they didn't know, and especially children, they didn't know anything about it. This girl, we're going to hear from his daughter later. His daughter, Kerri, didn't know he was a killer. He was her dad, and he was a good dad. He was a nice dad. She loved her dad. This is what always intrigues me the most, how these people can compartmentalize their lives so well that their wives and children have no idea. So he wasn't an abusive dad. Sometimes you do hear of killers, and when the children come out and talk about it, there might have been some signs or some clues. I don't think there was with Dennis Rader. His daughter. That I just, if you think about it, just imagine finding out one day, there's a knock on the door and there's the police and my dad's a serial killer. I just, speechless. Can't imagine how that must be. So I do, as well as sending prayers out to the families of the victims, well, for the victims and their families, I send prayers out as well for Kerri and her family, and I think he's got another daughter as well. But it's funny how they deal with things differently. So Kerri's way of dealing with it has been to come out and talk about it. Some members of these kind of, these families, they don't want to talk about it. Everyone deals with grief in a different way. Some people, it helps them to go public with it, write a book, do something constructive. Other people, they just want to, curl up in a dark room and don't want any attention whatsoever. So that's who we're going to talk about. Dennis Rader, do you know about this case? Do you know anything about it so far? So yeah, I'm sorry I'm not with you live, but I'm next. I will be reading your comments. I will definitely be reading your comments, etc. So please comment. Don't, because you can still. I don't know if I can. I don't know if you can still interact. Maybe you can. There's a certain way that I can do it that maybe, so it's like a live, but it's not live, it's a video, but you can still, because I know you like to chat between yourselves as well. I know that's important for you, probably more important than listening to me waffle on, because you can always listen to me anytime. But I know that you do like to chat amongst yourselves. So, okay, so I'm going to do my housekeeping first. So, as always, the best way you can support me is by liking, sharing, subscribing. I'm doing really well with the subscribers. I'm really happy with. Thank you so much, everyone who has subscribed or liked. Thank you so much. Comments as well help with the algorithm. We all talk about the mysterious algorithm of YouTube. One day I should do a video on that because it might help me understand, because I haven't got a bloody clue, to be honest. But anyway, I can see that it works when people like, YouTube then seems to push it out to a further audience, I suppose, because they think, oh, well, people have liked it. I did hear that even if you dislike it, it's the same. I don't know if that's true or not. As I say, need to do a video on that. So, and if you want to go that little bit further, you can join, become a member. The link should be on the screen, but it's on my YouTube channel, how to become a member. It's €1.99 a month, €1.99 a month, cancelable anytime. You get quite a lot of other footage on there, videos, photos, etc. Things, particularly about the Nicola Bulley case, that I think might be a bit sensitive to put on the whole, out to the whole of the world. What's the other way? Oh, you can PayPal me now. That's on my homepage on the YouTube page. You can buy me a Ko-fi or a coffee. You can send super chats, super stickers, etc. And I'm grateful for any donation, because I am trying really hard to get the money together now for a new laptop. So there you go. So that means that when I go on location, I don't have to be stuck with this rubbish laptop to make videos from. I can actually make some proper videos. Now, I mean, I can make them. I make this, but it probably take me 3 hours to make it. It's not even just to make the video itself. It's not even so much the making of the video itself. It's because it's so clogged up and slow. It's the uploading of it, doing the thumbnail, the description, etc. It just takes so long. But anyway, so yeah, that's it basically. That's the housekeeping. And as you know, I'm not gonna. Yeah, you can learn Spanish with me as well. My Spanish books are on Amazon, and my confession. Yeah, I think I might get that up actually, because I think people do like to know about the confessions book, even if they're not interested. I mean, so I know some of you have bought the Spanish books. I know that for certain, and a lot of you have subscribed to my Spanish channel, and thank you so much for that. I hope you're finding the videos useful. Let's have a look at this, just show you my books on Amazon. If you've seen it, now's the time to go and get your tea, coffee, vino, whatever you feel like, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of you that will have seen it before. So, Okay, so that should be up there now. Yeah. So if you want to know more about me, the book you want is The Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, Part 1. Hopefully there'll be a Part 2, because I'm sure, well, there are already things that I need to put in a Part 2. So, but that's the story really of how I came to live in Spain, my stalking experiences, how I became a Spanish teacher, etc. And it's not all doom and gloom. There's some funny bits in it as well. Then there's the Spanish books, Break the Language Barriers, levels 1, 2, 5. And if you want to learn Spanish. And of course, I do Zoom classes in Spanish, but the book you can learn with the book. There's a YouTube channel that goes with the book. You know, so every exercise you do in the book, you can watch the YouTube video that goes with it. Okay, so that's that. So let's get back to Dennis. So, of course, Dennis is from that era where there did seem to be more serial killers because, of course, we didn't have the DNA, etc., that we have now. But he is especially intriguing because of the way that he taunted the police. Oh, my God. He thought he was something. He thought he was so much cleverer than the police. And to be perfectly honest, for quite a while he was. He did escape detention for a long, long time. And unfortunately, as I say, 10 victims. Very sad. But okay, let's have a little overview of Dennis himself. It's funny because let me see how old he was. He's got that dad look to him. Let me show you some photos of him. Probably be a good idea to start with, is it? Yeah. Oh. I'll get some photos up and then we can have a look at him. If you haven't, some of you will have heard of him. Dennis Rader is his name, and his proclaimed title was BTK, Bind, Torture, Kill. But he gave himself that title, if you like. He was loving it. He loved it. He was like, he enjoyed. That was part of what he enjoyed. Not only the killing, but he enjoyed being. He enjoyed his nickname, and now you should be able to see him now. Yeah. So by the time he was caught, he was middle-aged. Oh, he's 78 now. Goodness me. He's 78 and he's still alive. I say it every time, they look after him too well in prison. 78. Why do these bad people live such long lives and good people don't live such long lives? Anyway, can't really, we don't know, do it? Now, so I don't really want to look at the masks and things. He was just crackers. I mean, this. I don't know if you can see him suspended from this tree. This is what he used. Do you remember when we did Russell Williams and he used to take pictures of him in his victim's underwear? Well, this is how Dennis got off. When he wasn't actually murdering people, he would tie himself up like that and string himself up and film himself. Dear me, dear me, dear me, dear me. So, yeah, there he is. He's Mr. Normal. He does look. When you look at him, you would never, there's nothing about him. When you look at him in his normal life, there's nothing about him to draw attention, is there? He was Mr. Normal, in his suit and everything. And to all intents and purposes, he was just a normal dad. But behind the scenes, he had all this going on. So these are down here. We've got some of his family photos. Yeah. Here's his victims. We're going to talk about them, obviously. As I say, I won't go into any detail, but I'd like to mention that this just gives me the creeps, this mask thing. Goodness me. Goodness me. Yeah. Makes you wonder, because of course now they've just caught this Long Island serial killer. How many more are out there? How many more are out there? Okay, so that's him. So I'll stop on the pictures of him at the top. I don't really want to look at the mask pictures. Okay, well, while I just read you some information about him. So he was born on March the 9th in 1945, and he's known as BTK, which is an abbreviation he gave himself for bind, torture, kill. So this was in Wichita, in Kansas, Wichita and Park City between 1974 and 1991. So nearly 20 years he was active. And he sent taunting letters to police and media outlets describing the details of his crimes. So, yeah, for 13 years, he didn't do anything. Now, I think it's when his children were young. Strange, isn't it? It's a long time for a serial killer to go without doing anything. Because normally once they start, there's no stopping them. But he did have a 13 years where he didn't do anything, and then he started sending his letters again in 2004. Oh gosh, so he operated between 1974 and 91. Oh God, and he started sending letters in 2004, which led to his 2005 arrest. So it was 30 years. 30 years before, to have 30 years of a normal life, a normal family life, before he was actually arrested. So he's currently serving 10 consecutive life sentences at the El Dorado Correctional Facility. Okay. So he apparently from a young age he had let's see, I've got to be careful what I say for, not only as far as YouTube's concerned, but I don't want to go into any gory details, but he formed fantasies, fantasies that were not appropriate about women from a very young age. And he tortured animals, which is a prime sort of concern. When children do that, they quite often turn out to be killers. He was a voyeur. He cross-dressed, spied on female neighbours. He stole underwear. He enjoyed himself with ropes and bindings around his neck, his arms and neck. So how he sort of did have these cooling periods between murders was he would take pictures of himself wearing women's clothes, stringing himself up, wearing masks, etc. And so that's what he would do. But he was widely regarded in his community as normal, polite, and well-mannered. He just faded into the background. Anyway, he went to university, served in the United States Air Force, and he married his wife, Paula Dietz, on May the 22nd, 1971. And they had 2 children, Kerri and Brian. So his other child is a boy. So I wonder what Brian thinks of it all. Because we'll get to know a little bit about what Kerri thinks of it. Kerri's been quite vocal, talking about her dad, etc. And that's been her way of coping with it. So he had various jobs. He was an assembler. He was a security officer, installed security alarms. And in many cases, he was installing security alarms for people concerned about the BTK killings, which is ironic. He became a dog catcher and a compliance officer in Park City, but apparently he was, people complained he was overzealous, and he seemed to take pleasure in bullying and harassing single women. And one neighbour complained that he had killed her dog. My God, Yeah, well, I can't even go there because anyway, so he was a member of the Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita, and he had been elected president of the church council, and he was a Cub Scout leader. Joe, whenever I read into cases, before you know who the murderer is, as soon as they say someone's a preacher or well, I always think that they're the ones that did it. What is it about? Why? What is it about religious people, or is that just is that a deliberate front, or do they really believe that part of their life? Are they just able to compartmentalize themselves so much? Anyway, so on July the 26th, he was arrested, 2005, and his wife was granted an emergency divorce. I just can't imagine how that was for her, to be honest. But Kerri I think she's still in touch with her father, or she certainly was in 2019, and she has forgiven him. I'm not really quite sure. It's not really her place to forgive him. I suppose she can forgive him for what he did to her, but to be fair, he didn't do anything to her. It's the other victims that families that need to, they've got the right to either forgive or not forgive him. But she says she struggles to reconcile him with the BTK killer because she said her childhood was normal, and they were a normal American family. So it all started on January the 15th, 1974, when 4 members of the Otero family were murdered in Wichita, Kansas. So again, we're not going into details, but the victims were the father, age 38, the mother, age 33, the son, young son, age 9, Joseph, and then Josephine, who was 11. She was the target. She was who he'd fixed on. He killed the whole family just to get her. And he confessed to it later on. And between 1974 and 1977, he killed 3 more women: Catherine Bright, Shirley Vianne Relford, and Nancy Fox. And Kevin Bright, the younger brother of Catherine Bright, he was actually there when so he didn't care who he killed, just to get the object of his attention. And Kevin Bright, he was there, and he feigned death. He was strangled and shot, and he feigned death, cleverly feigned death, and managed to escape with his life. He is thought to be the only surviving victim of the BTK attack. Anyway, so then in 1978, he sent a letter to a TV station claiming responsibility for all those murders. And he suggested many names for himself, and the one that stuck was BTK. He demanded media attention. This was his second letter, so he'd already written a letter. When did he write his first letter? Doesn't mention the first letter on there, but anyway, so this was his second letter. He demanded recognition. For goodness sake, what's wrong with him? Anyway, he enclosed poems, and he was mocking the police. He claimed to be driven to kill by Factor X. That he said it was a supernatural element that other serial killers had suffered from. Well, I wouldn't call it suffering, because he was, he liked it. He wasn't saying it was a bad thing. And he said that he intended to kill others. Anyway, he did. So one lady who was 63, Anna Williams, she escaped death by returning home much later than was expected. So he'd been watching her, and she arrived home later, and it saved her life. And he was apparently absolutely fuming when she got away with her life. He then killed Maureen Head, who was 53, who he actually took her body to his church, where he was president of the church council, and he photographed her body in various bondage positions. He then dumped the body in a remote ditch, and he had called this plan Project Cookie. So he planned it. He was very, very highly planned. Anyway, then later on there was another letter came. Then, he apparently stalked 2 other women in the 1980s. He received restraining orders against him. One of them changed her address to avoid him. So it was sort of vaguely on the police radar by the sound of it, because they don't take stalking that seriously now, but they certainly didn't take it. That was about the time I was stalked it was 1996, 95, 96. Believe me, there was no help. I don't know. I think it has got a little bit better, but there was nothing then. All the police said to me was, until he does anything, we can't do anything. So in other words, until you're dead, we can't do anything, or until he's caused you harm. There was nothing they could do. There was no law against stalking them. Anyway, his final victim was February the 1st, 1991. That was Dolores E. Davis. And he had killed her on January the 19th of 1991. So it became a cold case because he then just went quiet. So whether that was when he was having his children, his children were young, but he just stopped killing. As far as we know, he stopped killing, and he was one of those confession killers. When he got caught, he never stopped talking about it. So I think he would have said if he would have carried on killing. And then in 2004, that's when he started communicating with the media again. And this is what led to his arrest. Because there's quite a few things, but there's one final thing. Let me see. And it was something to do. I'm pretty sure it was something to do with the email he sent from the church. That's right. That's right. So in his letters to police, Rader asked if his writings, if they were put on a floppy disk, could be traced or not. The police answered his question in a newspaper ad posted in the Wichita Eagle, saying it would be safe to use the disk. So how stupid is he? The police tell him, no, we can't trace you from that floppy disk. So Dennis, who thinks that he's really intelligent and really clever and cleverer than the police, he goes, oh, okay, then the police have told me that I can't be caught from that floppy disk. So he used the floppy disk. And of course, then the police caught him. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So he sent this floppy disk to a TV station, like an affiliate of Fox News. And he also enclosed a letter, a gold-coloured necklace with a large medallion, and a photocopy of the cover of Rules of Prey, a 1989 novel by John Stanford about a serial killer. Well, police found metadata embedded in a deleted Microsoft Word document still stored on the floppy disk. And the metadata contained the words Christ Lutheran Church, and the document was marked as last modified by Dennis. So they got on the internet. They've determined that Dennis Rader was president of the church council. So they had, they saw some, when they drove past his house, they saw that the car, a black Jeep Cherokee, was the same car that they'd seen on some CCTV from other things that had been left. And so they had their circumstantial evidence. So they obtained a warrant to test the pap smear taken from his daughter at the Kansas State University Medical Clinic, and DNA tests showed a familial match between the smear and the sample from one of his victims' fingernails. And this indicated that the killer was closely related to Rader's daughter, And this, combined with the other evidence about the floppy disk, etc., was enough for him to be arrested. So he was finally arrested while he was driving near his home shortly after noon on February the 25th, 2005. And an officer said, "Mr. Rader, do you know why you're going downtown?" And he replied, "Oh, I have suspicions. Why?" Anyway, they searched his home. They found computer equipment, pantyhose, and they announced, and they finally, because of the evidence that they'd found, they announced finally, BTK is arrested. And that was it. So he went to, he confessed. He confessed to all the murders. That's one good thing, I suppose. Now we're going to have a little look at him. I was looking at him confessing. Got a little video. Let's have a little listen to him. He loved giving evidence. You can see he just revelled in it. He looks I don't think he's ever showed remorse. He looked a little bit remorseful. You let me know what you think. I don't think he was remorseful. These sort of people, they're only remorseful because they've been caught, aren't they? Definitely don't think he was actually genuinely remorseful. Okay, let me just make sure you're seeing that. Yeah, you are. Let's see.
Mr. Rader, I need to find out more information. On that particular day, the 15th day of January, 1974, can you tell me where you went to kill Mr. Joseph Otero?
I think it's 1834. Hitchcock.
All right. Can you tell me approximately what time of day you went there?
Somewhere between 7 and 7:30.
This particular location, did you know these people?
No, that's no, that was part of my, I guess my what you call fantasy. These people were selected.
All right. So you were engaged in some kind of fantasy during this period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, when you use the term fantasy, is this something you were doing for your personal pleasure?
Sexual fantasy, sir.
I see. So you went to this residence, and what occurred then?
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing it now because I don't want to show too much of that on my channel because it'll get me a strike. It's not very, but the whole confession, the whole case, the sentencing is available on YouTube. If you do want to watch the whole thing, he's very candid. He's very candid about it all. He goes into great detail, which isn't very nice, but at the end of the day, at least he saved. Pled guilty and he saved a trial. You've just got to take the only positives you can out of these things, haven't you? Now, what I want to look at now is his daughter talking about her dad. I do think it must have been very, very difficult for her. So let's have a look at that. Okay.
We don't have newspapers in our house. We don't have the news running. We've tried to shelter our kids from the reality of what my father has done. And finally I said, Dad hurt some people.
Gosh, it must have been awful to learn that. Just suddenly a whole Whole life changes.
I found out I was pregnant, and my therapist encouraged me to write my dad in prison. So I wrote him, and I told him I was expecting. But not long after I wrote him, I shut down again because I started thinking about that. My mom was pregnant with me when my dad murdered Nancy Fox in December of 77.
25-year-old Nancy Jo Fox was found dead in her Pershing Street apartment.
I just couldn't imagine being pregnant, being a daughter. And when she was born, I was okay for a little bit, and then I fell into pretty deep postpartum depression. Even now as a mother, like, it can be challenging. My reality is I live with anxiety and depression and PTSD.
Oh,
When my daughter was 5, she started saying, like, you know, I have one grandpa, but shouldn't I have 2 grandpas? Like, where's my other grandpa? And I remember being real upset, crying in the car around Father's Day. And I finally said, I have a dad, but my dad's in prison. And she's like, well, what's prison? And I was like, well, it's like a really long time out for adults. And she's like, well, how long? I'm like, really long, you know. So now she's 10. So we started checking with her as she started getting older. Like, I would say, what's the worst thing anybody could do? Because I wanted to see what she knew about, like, the worst of humanity. And she would say, like, somebody breaking into a home, like a robber. So I knew there was no way she was prepared to hear, like, that her grandfather was a murderer. We don't have newspapers in our house. We don't have the news running. We've tried to shelter our kids from the reality of what my father has done and who their grandfather is. But we also don't want them to not know anything and then become teenagers and look on the internet and wonder, like, why is mom on the internet? So we've slowly, as they've grown up, you know, tried to gently tell them, like, grandpa's in prison the rest of his life and the life after that. I've shared pictures of their grandfather. They've seen a little bit of the wedding video. They've seen me writing. They know mom's been writing a book forever.
see how normal those pictures are of him giving her away. I just feel so much for this girl. I feel so much for her, what she's had to go through. And yeah, she doesn't know what to tell her children, because if she tells them the truth, that's brutal. But if she doesn't tell them, one day they're going to find out anyway. She's got to tell them.
Like, they know, like, it's about my life with my dad. Finally, last fall, they kept bothering me, like, what did your dad do? What did your dad do? And finally I said, Dad hurt some people. And that's pretty much where we're at right now with our 10-year-old and our 7-year-old. My dedication in my book is partly to them, saying,
Oh,
like, Emily and Ian, I wrote this story to tell you my story when you're old enough to read it. I want to hand them my book when they're close to being adults, to say, this is your mom, you know.
oh,
Like, this is why your mom is sobbing on a Wednesday afternoon on the phone, you know, or this is why your mom needs a lot of naps. This is what your mom's gone through. And, you know, maybe this is why mom isn't always the best mom in the world, because she's dealing with a lot. But I just want them to know, like, what I have lived and what I've fought through to be here alive, to be their mom. You know, I didn't think I was going to survive this. And, like, without my faith and without my husband and the rest of my family, I wouldn't be here. I want them and other people to know what it's like on this side, what it's like to live with somebody like my father and go through what we've gone through. I see a lot of families, you know, like with a school shooter or with the Vegas shooting, like the media went and contacted that man's brothers right away. And like they're interviewing them and they're in shock. And I know what that feels like, you know, and I just trying to tell my story and let the rest of the world know what it's like to be a daughter of a serial killer.
Oh my God. Goodness me. I mean, can you imagine? Just that poor girl. So, you know, that's it. It's the ripples in a pond, these murders. You've got the victims themselves, the people that he murdered, got their families. You know, it goes out like ripples. And then you've got his own family, what he's done to his own family. Well, you can see that poor girl. And then, you know, her children are going to have to come to terms with it and live with it and know that that man's blood is in their genes. You know, that'd be a big thing to cope with, knowing that you're related by blood to that person. Very big thing to deal with. Yeah, and we can all imagine. You can imagine you just get home from school one day and the police are there, and it's oh, what's going on? Oh, well, they've just arrested your dad. Turns out he's murdered 10 people. Anyway, so I hope you found that interesting, the story of Dennis Rader. What can we learn from that? I think that what we need to learn from that is the empathy that we need, not only for the victims, because also obviously we need the empathy for the victims and the victims' families, but we need empathy for his family as well, because they are innocent in this. They didn't do anything wrong and they're having to live with it. They're having to live with it too. You know, like she was saying that I expect she's had terrible depression. I expect she had terrible depression. She was lucky enough to meet somebody who took her on, warts and all, really, because that'd be just thinking about if you know, you meet someone and you start having a relationship with them and then it starts getting serious and then they ask you to marry them, or and then suddenly somewhere along that line, where do you tell them that your father's a serial killer? Unless they knew all along. I mean, I don't know anything about her husband, but you know, difficult. Okay, so enjoy the rest of your evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are when you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please like if you don't mind, and subscribe if you haven't already, if you don't mind. And remember to always live and love very wisely. You know, it feels like sometimes, no matter how wisely you try and live and love, you can't control what your father does or your mother does, because sometimes it's mothers who do these terrible things. So, you know, gosh, sometimes I think you just have to hope for the best, don't you? Just lucky if you don't get embroiled in any of these things. Look after you, because you are the most important thing, of course, because without you being okay, you can't look after all your loved ones. And we like to look after our loved ones, don't we? So look after you first. I'll see you very soon in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.